Ash Barty won the Australian Open, and I called it. I made a video at the start of the Australian Open, called that Ash Barty would win it all. And really, it's not that difficult because she is a phenomenal player. Now, I've already done 2 videos on her serve and on her backhand slice, both major weapons. Yep, meet my foster cat. The link to both videos are in the description below if you want to check those out. But it's not just her serve and not just her slice. She is using both of those shots to set up the shot that does major damage, and that's her forehand. Ash Barty played 51% either on the baseline or inside the baseline. And what that translates into is constant pressure, time-wise and space-wise. The closer you are inside the court, the further you are inside the court, the more angles you can open, and the more time, of course, you are taken away from your opponent. And if you then combine it with technical perfection, you have Ash Barty, Australian Open winner 2022. My name is Meike Babel, former top 30 WTA pro, and if you want to support my channel, please feel free to subscribe. Click that bell button that lets you know when I'm putting new content out. And now, let's look at what I think is the best forehand in the women's game. So starting with the grip, as usual, because the grip demands the swing path and the contact point, Ash Barty is in what I want to call a soft semi-Western. So she's not quite in an Eastern grip. So if you look at the index finger knuckle, the underside, it's not quite on the biggest bevel here. It's just ever so slightly under. So a soft semi-Western or very, very heavy Eastern grip. What I find very interesting is how she creates her acceleration. So a little bit unusual, I find, is that really high take back. So you see here, as she separates, that her left hand and her right hand are about at the height of her head. However, she does adjust that depending on the incoming ball. And of course, that gives her a really good racket head drop that she also supports with a really good drop in her legs so that she can at any point get under the ball, of course. So starting from a great unit turn and then dropping really low into her outside leg, loading the outside leg here. This is where she creates her energy. Just dropping into that outside leg and a really good low base. And that definitely is one thing that I would recommend you work on, because the stability that Ash Barty has is really one of the main features of her shot. And then you see the release of that energy. And it's coming again from the outside leg, loading of the outside leg here. And then notice that the hip fires ever so slightly before the racket really starts to accelerate. So this is where she creates all her pop. And you also see that she lifts off. And that doesn't come from her intentionally jumping. That is just a result of the extremely heavy load right here. And then finish, rolls over that ball, and you see how she's in the air and creates that beautiful angular momentum that gives her as much rotation on the ball, power on the ball, and of course, control. So not only does she adjust the height of the take back, and I'll get to that in a second. Of course, she also adjusts her stances depending on what kind of ball she's getting. So this is an open stance. And then when she has the opportunity to step in, take time away from her opponent, that's a closed stance here. And again, that beautifully dropping into the knees here, into the ball, and then coming through. And it's just so ridiculously smooth. So there's no forced element in this forehand. And you also see here one other key component of a really good forehand that you will create if you can relax your wrist is the so-called lock-in position, meaning that when the ball's coming in here in a second, the butt cap points to the ball. So you do not want to force this position, that wrist lag here. And we notice that the racket face is pointing to the ground, starting from about here, 45 degrees. And this is really where you see the acceleration. This is where she starts really driving into the ball. And then as she's swinging forward from that slightly closed position here, of course, the racket catches up. And as she is making contact, the racket face is either completely neutral or ever so slightly closed. And we can't quite see that here because I don't have enough frames on the recording here. But just again, super smooth and relaxed. So in this recording, again, we have all three different stances. So we've got one open stance, one closed stance, and then the last one is a semi-open stance. So let's now look at the next adjustment. Top of the split step, you see both feet and both frames in the air. So that means the opponent has just made contact. And you see on both sides here, the hip starts to set out towards the direction of where she wants to go. Loading on the outside leg in both instances, really, really low. And because she has a little bit more time in the left frame, the take back is a little higher. So if I can get to the highest point here, we do see the distinct difference here in the take back. However, the turn, of course, is not affected by it. She has a really great coil on both of those shots. Both times body weight comes in and contact is in front. So that's really one thing of beauty when you watch Ashleigh Barty's forehand, which of course she sets up a lot with her slice. And I think let's go over one more time over the component that you can copy. So number one, I always stress that is you can definitely copy the split step. That it has nothing to do with her being number one in the world. You want to be on top of your split step right here when your opponent is making contact. Number two, whatever style you have is this turn. So you definitely want to actively use your left arm there to bring your upper body around to help with that unit turn. The second or third thing I should say is the wrist lag you can create if you relax your arm. If you push your forehand, if you force your forehand, you will not get into this position. And the last thing that I believe is very much copyable is the loading of the outside, or here in this instance, the back leg. So this is where your drive comes from. This is where your pop comes from. Loading with the outside leg gives you an enormous amount of power, control, and of course, that's what we want. If you like these types of analysis, please go ahead and subscribe. Recommend my channel to your tennis friends. Click on the bell symbol, and then I will see you on my channel here really soon.